Well, Mina Kimes from ESPN had this to say about Jadeveon Clowney and how she thinks he fits in to the scheme of the NFL.
I feel like Jadeveon Clowney, we've almost reached a point where he's underrated. For a while, there was a lot of criticism of him around the league that he was overrated coming out of college because he wasn't able to turn that pass rush production into bringing down the quarterback, which is why he, of course, ranks 211th. But for all of that, he is still incredibly disruptive, especially on the inside, which is where I suspect you'll see him lined up a lot next to Myles Garrett. And he is an elite run defender, and that matters a great deal for this Browns team because while the defense made a ton of additions, particularly on the back end, which I believe Kimberly's going to talk about, they also had some really significant losses on the defensive line at tackle. Larry Ogunjobi is gone. Sheldon Richardson is gone. They're counting on young players and draft picks like Tommy Togiai to step up. And what would help those players a lot is if Jadeveon Clowney is able to bring that elite run-stopping prowess, that tackling, those tackles for losses that he did in previous stops to this defense. And I think he has that in him because he is still a very, very good player. He's just not one of the best pass rushers in the NFL.
And Doug, that's a point I think worth reiterating. He's really good against the run for whatever you want to say about his inability to get sacks at this point. We've seen the clips there, and he's a good run defender.
No, I know people like Scott Pasco for us have talked about that. You look at the numbers, and it's easy for knuckleheads like me to think that, defensive ends, edge guys, all that matters is sacks. All that matters is pass rush, and that's clearly not the case. I do think, and Mina's really smart. She's one of the smartest football analysts out there. That what it means for defensive tackle when you do have less sure things at defensive tackle. I mean, that Clowney has that ability. I think of all the edge guys that you could have brought in, he probably does that almost better than anybody who was out there. Better than some guys who got bigger money, who really are just pass rushers, and that's it. So that part of it, I think, is really interesting, and he doesn't have to be the leading sack guy. He can help Myles in that way, but that, when teams are, trying to put games away on the ground or, things are getting down and dirty in the second half of a game, one tackle for loss on a 1st and 10 where you snuff out a run. I mean, those can be game-changing types of plays just as much as a sack can be. So it is a thing that sometimes with edge rushers, we think about it too little, but Mina's exactly right that if that's what he's going to bring again, that's a little different than what they have elsewhere.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it counts against him because he was the number 1 overall pick and so hyped, and everybody remembers the play against Michigan in the bowl game? Is that working against him in some ways?
I don't know. I think that he's moved around a little bit the last couple of years. Is more of it to me that you start that sort of bouncing around part of your career. Not that he's been a million places, but if he had come straight from the Texans to the Browns, and it's like, J.J. Watt, was a Texan his whole career, and then he hit free agency, and now he's on the Cardinals, and that's it. I think it is more about why are you available, right? Like, why are you moving around a little bit? And that, at least for me, is a little more the question. Now the thing is, I mean, great teams sort of hit on flyers, right? That's part of this. Part of being a great team is Myles Garrett. He's obvious, he's good. You trade for Odell Beckham, he's good. Nick Chubb, that's the 2nd round pick, he's good. But sometimes you take these things where you take a shot. 1 year for $8 million, you take a shot, and if he plays like a $16 million defensive end, I mean, that's how you win the Super Bowl. So, I mean, I think a good team, you have to have your core, and that's why the Browns are in such good shape. He's not in their core. He's not a must. He's a bonus, right? So that's what makes this move so great, and then that feeds on itself. I think it increases the chances of it working because it's not a desperation move. It's not a gotta-have-it move. It's let's take a shot on this guy, and if he really pops, now all of a sudden you might have the best roster in football.